Actually, just today, earlier today, Doomberg published an article on their Substack titled Farmers on the Brink. And in this article, they talk about how restrictions on stuff like natural gas and diesel fuel is having an impact on fertilizer prices and making things more difficult and expensive for farmers, saying in the end that we believe that we are on the onset of a global famine of historic proportions. In a staggering defiance of logic, many U.S. politicians are still attacking the lifeblood of our own energy production infrastructure, looking to score political points against the other team, blaming price-taking procedures of global commodities for gouging, threatening producers of energy with windfall profits taxes, resisting calls to remove bureaucratic hurdles to new production, and refusing to open an introductory physics textbook to help guide them through the suite of policy choices that require true leadership to get right. They remain stuck in an endless loop of platitudes, blame storming, corruption, and ignorance. So gasoline prices are soaring, they're through the roof, and what are our beloved political leaders doing about it? Well, here in the great state of California, we have our governor, goofy ass Gavin Newsom, responding to soaring gas prices, as you can see, by offering rebates, tax rebates, to gas-powered vehicle owners up to $400 per vehicle and 2 vehicles per owner, you guys. Now, this normally would not be hilarious, but Gavin Newsom, for those who don't know, Gavin Newsom has been on a bit of a crusade against fossil fuels. Back in 2017, Gavin Newsom supported a tax increase on fuel in the state of California. Yeah, how's that going? Huh, Gavin? Now you got it. Now you got to give everyone rebates. Back in 2019, Gavin Newsom tweeted that we need to build a future beyond fossil fuels.
Blow it out your ass.
And then in 2020, Gavin Newsom announced that he was signing an executive order that will ban the sale of new gas-powered vehicles in the state of California by 2035. Yeah, guys, hopefully electric vehicles are affordable by 2035. I think, the average price is, $50,000 these days? And hopefully we can afford to charge these vehicles after Gavin Newsom shuts down the Diablo Canyon nuclear power plant and other reliable sources of energy on his way out. Guess we'll just have to go out and spend, $20,000 plus to put solar panels on our roofs? No big deal or anything. It's not like California is the most expensive state to live in. And that's assuming you own your own house, which you probably don't unless you have a $500,000 laying around for a down payment. And even then, you also have to hope that your local government does not make installing solar panels an expensive hassle. As Bill Maher talked about his experience recently on the Adam Carolla show.
Which is about the size of that. This is the box that apparently the solar comes into. I had to build its own home, which probably could house the homeless. People could live in that shed. It's a beautiful shed that houses a little box.
Right.
That took forever. It has to be 55 feet from the curb. It has to this. It has to that.
Yeah, Bill Maher, he got solar panels installed at his house, and I guess he had to deal with a lot of local regulations.
I mean, it used to come in on a pole. They probably could have done it just on that, but no. Had to have its own shed. And then all the people who had to come out and see it. Look, I can't get into the ins and outs. I don't want to. It was too painful a memory. But all the regulations that, I mean, it's I don't know if it's Orwellian or Kafkaesque or both of them. It was just strange. Very strange. What the hoops that you had to jump through to do something that the state was advising you to do.
Yeah, nice work, guys. Nice work, California. Well done. Last April, Gavin Newsom announced that he was going to end fracking in the state of California and phase out oil extraction. Going to begin by halting permits. And then a few months after that, Gavin Newsom bragged to the Republican Party and oil companies, saying that, this is in November of 2021, Gavin Newsom said to the GOP and oil companies, they want you to believe that getting rid of oil will hurt our economy, and California is proof that that is not true. Yeah, how's that working out, huh, Gavin? So yeah, guys, California is doing so well with the crusade against fossil fuels that now Gavin Newsom is proposing that the state send rebate checks so that Californians will have an easier time burning fossil fuels. Whoops. So for those keeping score, fuel taxes are good. Fossil fuels are bad. Gas-powered vehicles are bad. But, whoops, it's an election year, and my voters, they might be a little upset that gas prices are soaring. They're through the roof. So here you go, gas-powered vehicle owners. Here's some money for you to buy gasoline with so that you can send carbon dioxide into the atmosphere. Now, Gavin Newsom is actually getting a little bit of backlash from people on the left on this. The LA Times editorial board published a response titled, Governor Gavin Newsom's $400 rebate throws carless Californians under the bus, saying that Newsom is also choosing to subsidize car owners. Now, I don't know if subsidize is the correct word here. I know I'm splitting hairs, but, you know, the LA Times, they're only one of the premier news organizations in the nation. Maybe they should be a little more careful with their words. Anyway, Newsom is also choosing to subsidize car owners at a time when the state is trying to reduce its reliance on fossil fuels and encourage people to drive less. High gas prices can be a powerful motivator for consumers to change their behavior and their vehicles.
Blow it out your ass.
Simply sending debit cards to vehicle owners and offering 3 months of free transit feels like a missed opportunity when the state could seize the moment to encourage people to make lasting changes. And this is an ongoing conundrum with the left. Now, I've always said that the left is merely a collection, it's a broad general movement of different ideologies and interest groups and pressure groups, sometimes of which come into conflict with one another. And that's what we're seeing. On one hand, we have the environmentalists and the warmongers who want to disregard economics, want to disregard the standard of living of ordinary people. As Greta No Thunberg said at her inspirational speech at the United Nations, how dare you guys worry about stuff like money and eternal economic growth? Back in September of 2021, the Sunrise Movement, which is another environmentalist activist group, they announced that they were partnering with other activist groups like the Sierra Club and others to launch a Gas is Not Clean campaign, talking about how they want to ensure that gas is prohibited. And you have a lot of quotes from different activists and politicians in this statement, talking about how we need to ban fossil fuels, get off of gasoline. That was back in September of 2021. And now the Sunrise Movement is complaining about greedy oil companies raising prices, making it more difficult for ordinary people to afford gasoline, implying that it's good for people to enjoy cheap gasoline. Oops. And this is the conflict with the left. On one hand, you have the socialists and economic fascist types who claim to be champions of the little guy and the downtrodden, claiming that they want to raise people out of poverty, ensure everyone has a decent standard of living. But then you have the environmentalist and warmonger types on the left who want to prohibit fossil fuels, which will impoverish the people that they claim to care about. Yeah, sorry guys, you can't have it both ways. And I think it's time that all of these ungrateful shits show some appreciation for fossil fuel energy and how incredible fossil fuels are at improving the standard of living. It's odd. Another double standard I've noticed lately is that a lot of people on the left, they virtue signal, talking about how it's virtuous to pay higher gasoline prices because, hey, we got to do our part to stop Vladimir Putin. But then at the same time, they also want to get all angry with big oil companies. Like, why are you guys getting all upset with the executives at Chevron? I thought that paying more at the pump was this virtuous activity. But you know, all this talk about high gasoline prices and boycotting Russian oil, what if there was a guy that could bring down the price of refined oil by, say, I don't know, 86%? And not only that, found a way to compete with Russian oil producers overseas. You guys might think today, well, that sounds awesome. I would love for a guy to do that. That'd be great. And I would say,
You're goddamn right.
now, there was a guy who actually did this, and his name was J.D. Rockefeller. Now, most people think of J.D. Rockefeller. They don't think of him as awesome, because we've often been told in history class, and we're constantly reminded about how Rockefeller's company, Standard Oil, was one big, scary monopoly. Woo! Even a lot of conservatives buy into this malarkey, as you can see with clueless Candace Owens. I'm pretty sure I've heard Charlie Kirk parrot this notion before about how we need trust busters like Teddy Roosevelt to save Americans from cheap oil and safer working conditions, although I had a hard time finding the clip. But according to Burton Folson's book, The Myth of the Robber Barons,
Read a book, read a book, read a motherfucking book. Read a book, read a book, read a motherfucking book.
he talks about how J.D. Rockefeller, contrary to popular belief, Standard Oil did have a lot of competition. He got a lot of it overseas, particularly from Russian oil producers. And this was because Russia, their sources of oil were much more concentrated and much better. They were much easier to refine, so they were able to compete with Standard Oil overseas. And as Burton Folsom talks about, as you can see, Rockefeller's solution to these problems was to stake the future of his company on new oil discoveries near Lima, Ohio. Drillers found oil in the Ohio-Indiana region in 1885, but they could not market it. It had a sulfur base and stank like rotten eggs. Even touching this oil meant a long, soapy bath or social ostracism. No one wanted to sell or buy it, and no city even wanted it shipped there. Only Rockefeller seemed interested. And Folsom talks about how Rockefeller, he pulled out a lot of stops. Even his board of directors did not want to get involved with this stinky oil. So Rockefeller invested millions of dollars of his own money, and he hired scientists like Herman Frasch and William Burton, who worked hard, and they eventually were able to make use of this oil. As Folsom says, the worthless Lima oil that Rockefeller had stockpiled suddenly became valuable. Standard Oil would be able to supply cheap kerosene for years to come. Talking about how guys like William Burton helped clarify the Lima oil. He invented cracking, a method of heating oil to higher temperatures to get more use out of the product. Also mentioning that Standard Oil had to deal with stuff like tariffs overseas. That was another hurdle he had to deal with. Rockefeller had to pull out a lot of stops to make his product better and cheaper. Sometimes Rockefeller had to lower the price of his oil to roughly 5 cents per gallon, leaving almost no profit margin, hoping that he could maintain his competition, saying that if Standard Oil had not pulled out all of these stops, if Rockefeller had not done what he did, that the foreign markets would have been dominated by Russian oil. Alex Epstein also talks a lot about this in his essay from 2008 titled Vindicating Capitalism, The Real History of Standard Oil. Alex Epstein wrote this in response to a lot of the muckrakers of the progressive era like Ida Tarbell and Henry Demarest Lloyd and their framing of Standard Oil, adding context to the oil refining industry before Rockefeller came along, saying that still the market's primitive methods of production and distribution at this early stage made it impossible for it to have anywhere near the worldwide impact it would have by the time Lloyd's famous essay, Damning Rockefeller, was published. A particular problematic area was transportation, which was convoluted and extremely expensive. Oil was transported in 42-gallon wood barrels of spotty quality, costing $2.50 each. Each one had to be filled and sealed separately and piled onto a railroad platform where barrels were prone to leak or fall off, or occasionally onto a barge where barrels were prone to fall off and start fires. The myriad of small refiners each could ship only a handful of barrels at a time. This required the railroads to make many separate stops at different destinations for different refiners, which resulted in lengthy and expensive journey for both railroads and refiners. And for some time, this was the best aspect of the process. In the early days, to get barrels of crude oil assorted oil spots in northwest Pennsylvania onto railways headed for the refineries, oil was transported by horse and wagon by teamsters, often through roadless territory and waist-high mud, with barrels perpetually bouncing and frequently breaking or falling out. Because of government intervention, the Teamsters had a huge influence in politics and for years prevented the construction of local pipelines, an incomparably superior form of oil transportation. The refining process, the core of the industry, was also at a primitive stage. To refine crude oil is to extract from it one or more of its valuable fractions, such as kerosene for illumination, paraffin wax for candles, or gasoline for fuel. The heart of the refining process uses a still, a distillation apparatus to heat oil at multiple increasing temperatures to boil and separate different fractions, each of which has a different boiling point. Distillation is simple in concept and basic execution, but to produce quality kerosene and other byproducts requires precise temperature controls and various additional purification procedures. Impure kerosene could be highly explosive. Death by kerosene was a common phenomenon in the 1860s and even the 1870s, claiming thousands of lives annually. In fact, this spotty quality of American kerosene was what inspired John Rockefeller to call his company Standard Oil. Yeah, guys, so, man, what a monster that Standard Oil was. Making oil transportation and production a lot safer. Essay goes on to say, Standard's focus on science led to many other profitable breakthroughs, including the ability to crack crude for maximum gasoline. Cracking is changing the molecular structure of crude to increase the amount of a given fraction. In science, as in many other areas, Standard's internal specialization paid off. Just as specialization under the division of labor in a society makes the society incomparably more productive than a society in which each individual has to produce everything for himself, specialization under the division of labor within Standard Oil had similar results for the company. Finally, going on to say that in early 1900s, many more competitors came out of the scene, some of whom remain household names: Associated Oil and Gas, Texaco, Gulf, Sun Oil, and Union Oil, to name a few, whereas the number of refineries had once shrunk due to the glut of inefficient ones. New demand across a variety of locations, along with better business organization and better technology, led to a growth in the number of separate refineries from 125 in 1908 to 147 in 1911. Between 1898 and 1906, Standard Oil's production increased, but its market share of oil production declined from 34% to 11%. Similarly, in the realm of refining, Standard's market share declined, while its volume increased steadily from 39 million barrels in 1892 to 99 million in 1911. By the early 1900s, Standard Oil had provided the world with an illustration of the magnificent productive achievements that are made possible by economic freedom. It had shown that when companies are free to produce and trade as they choose, to sell to as many willing customers as they can, a man or a company of extraordinary ability can make staggering contributions to human life. In this case, lighting up the world, fueling transportation, and pioneering corporate structures that would make every other industry more productive in the decades to come. And with the emergence of highly profitable competitors in the early 1900s, the notion that Standard controlled the market should have been scrapped off once and for all. Of course, breaking up Standard Oil was not enough for economic planners and power lusters, as Daniel Yergin talks about in his book, The Prize.
Read a book, read a book, read a motherfucking book. Read a book, read a book, read a motherfucking book.
Talks about how in 1912, after Standard Oil was broken up, Theodore Roosevelt, 4 years out of office and making a new run at the White House, and Standard Oil was once again his target, saying the price of the stock has gone up over 100%, so that Mr. Rockefeller and his associates have actually seen their fortunes doubled. He thundered during the campaign, saying, "No wonder that Wall Street's prayer now is, oh, merciful Providence, give us another dissolution." You see, it's never enough for these goons like Teddy Roosevelt.
What an asshole!
So this is what Rockefeller and Standard Oil were and still are hated for: maximizing efficiency, making production more safe, bringing down prices for consumers, getting more out of a barrel of oil, and most importantly, making money. Now, bringing this to today, Elizabeth Warren, back in 2019, she wrote an essay about why we need to break up big tech. And in one point in the essay, she talks about how America has a long tradition of breaking up companies when they have become too big and too dominant, even if they are generally providing good service at a reasonable price. A century ago in the Gilded Age, waves of mergers led to the creation of some of the biggest companies in American history, from Standard Oil and J.P. Morgan to the railroads and AT&T. In response to the rise of these trusts, Republican and Democrat reformers pushed for antitrust laws to break up these conglomerations of power to ensure competition. And nowadays, Elizabeth Warren, she's going on the crusade against big oil, not for bringing prices down, but for price gouging, increasing prices to maximize their profits, going as far to say that we need new taxes like this windfall profits tax that she is proposing, along with goofs like Bolshevik Bernie Sanders. So which way do you want it? When big oil companies like Standard Oil, when they bring prices down, they offer a quality product, a supreme quality product, while also bringing prices down. Well, we can't allow that, because then Standard Oil, they might monopolize the market and they need to be stopped. We need to punish them with antitrust laws. They need to be broken up. But now, if oil companies increase the price of gasoline, well, now they're price gouging and they need to be punished for being greedy, and we need new taxes to keep them in line. So between this and the hilarious flip-flops of people like Gavin Newsom and the Sunrise Movement, it appears that these power lusters are full of double standards and contradictions. The only thing that they're consistent about is their contempt for the good and their lust for power.